Welcome to Podsauce, your podcast discovery show. I'm Dax Holt.
I am Alicia Renee.
There are so many podcasts out there. We're changing our slogans to 3 million plus
1
podcasts.
1,000,000%, 3 million
50 million plus episodes.
I would
and
say.
The beauty of this show is really that we are helping people discover amazing content out there, sifting through, and a lot of people have come up to me saying, Dax, I really appreciate your show and what you guys do because I have been introduced to such good content that I'm now binging. I mean, that's all I want to hear from people.
No, for sure. But you know what, Dax? I think what I really love about Podsauce, though, is that even if you're talking about, and let's just say true crime, for instance, because true crime is such a huge theme in the podcast space. I mean, it's always charting. There are maybe, I'd say, a couple thousand different podcasts, if not a million plus.
A million. We actually have a true crime podcast coming up with Mafia Tapes.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've heard of this, but we got Celia, who is the host of that, coming on in a little bit.
It's so good.
Such a good podcast. But for now, you have a true crime podcast.
I do have a true crime podcast. Actually, I have a category that is very popular amongst all of our viewers and listeners. Thank you very much. You all know what's coming up next, and if you don't, it's Murder Most Foul, a true crime podcast. You gotta lighten it up on the end. This one actually, Dax, is really, really good. It came recommended by Ange. Shout out to Ange. It's called BONAPARTE. I believe I'm saying that correctly. However, this one is hosted by Ann Champion and Jason Stavers. Now, this one revolves around Laura. Laura is actually a really, really good friend of Ann. Get you a friend like Ann. If you find yourself in danger, you want a friend like Ann, because what happened was Laura, one of her hometown girlfriends, just suddenly came up missing. Well, dead. She came up dead. And the way her body was discovered alongside a dirt road, the way they described the placement of her body is kind of reminiscent to the Black Dahlia podcast. This particular podcast is very reminiscent to, I don't know if you remember Gone South. It was another whodunit that we did. And it was just so enthralling. So, what's the word? I was just captivated, even with the production, the SFX, the way they bring in actual interviews, but they set the atmosphere beautifully so, like you can hear Anne in her law office. She's now a very well-esteemed and established lawyer, and she uses her tools and her resources to go back to retrace Laura's steps to hopefully find out who killed her friend. Yeah. I have to say that this murder has gone unsolved for over 25 years. When you listen to the podcast, and I'm not saying that it's the way they structured it to make you believe that these people are who killed it, but deductive reasoning says, I'm looking at you, Tony, and I'm looking at you, Sarah.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. This is all conjecture. Yes, thank you. I don't need anyone sending me emails, but allegedly, my spirit says, because you know I went to school for law, right?
Haven't said that for a while, though.
It's back. Yeah, it's back. But yeah, when you listen to it, you kind of get the feeling that there's something not right about the way Tony and Sarah describe their interactions with Laura in her final days on this earth. So Bonaparte, basically, it just covers Anne going back to Ohio, using all of the resources and the full backing of her law firm to try to move legislature in her favor to open up the cold case of Laura's over 25-year unsolved cold case.
Sounds like a fascinating listen.
It's really good.
You're into true crime podcasts, definitely check that one out.
I would.
And if you are into true crime, don't go anywhere. We got Mafia Tapes coming up. This is Podsauce.
Welcome back to Podsauce, your podcast discovery show. I'm Alicia Renee.
I'm Dax Holt.
Dax, you got a little something for us. Now, listen, let me tell you something. I am looking forward to your pick because I must say, and this is the one time you might want to get this footage from Tim, and I'm going to give you your flowers. The last few times you did lead me to water. You led me to the water and I drank.
I think I'm going to lead you to water once again.
What you got?
This one is great. So my pick of the week, which is obviously a podcast that I listen to that I like and I think other people will.
Oh, this is yours. It's not a new discovery?
No, this is my pick.
Oh.
It's called, Yo, is this racist? And it is such a good podcast. So it's Andrew T. and Connie Newsom, and they have this podcast, and they basically talk about current events. They talk about what's going on in their lives. They talk about just kind of the world in general, and they sound off on everything that's happening right now. But the best part of the show is they have callers that call in and will talk about something going on in their life and say, so is this racist?
I love it.
And they will then dissect that caller's question and really get into it. And of course, they go off topic and then come back, and it's a really fun, interesting listen. And I gotta say, I learn a lot from the podcast, because there's even things that you wouldn't even think are racist or have a bad connotation to them. And then they start talking about it, and you can hear they're even discovering it as they're going through. And one of the funniest callers that I heard recently was a woman. She called in and she said, look, you know, there was a little fire in our apartment, and the firemen showed up, but so did the police. And she goes, I live in an all-black community. My husband is white. He's the only white man, and he is now very concerned that it appears that he called the cops for the fire.
I didn't see that coming.
And so she's like, so is he being too paranoid? And it led into the funniest conversation between everyone. And
send me that episode.
yeah, I will send it to you. It's so good. But Tawny, the way her answer was like, it shouldn't be so much, should he be worried about what people are thinking? It's, what have you done when the cops aren't there to make your neighbors even think it's you in the first place? Like, if you're down with everyone, then no one's going to think it's you, because when you call 911, everyone shows up. I mean, the episode made me laugh so hard, and they make each other laugh. It's just a really good, informative podcast where, you know, if you want to just open your mind and talk about all the crap going on in society, this would be the podcast.
That sounds so good, Dax.
It's
Look at you, continuing to be a good white ally. Continuing to do God's work out here. I love it.
I mean, I try.
I mean, you do, and you do well. You do well. We're going to put up a link to that particular episode on our webpage, podsauce.com. While you're on the interwebs, ease on down to our YouTube page, youtube.com/thepodsauce. And while you're there, hit like and subscribe. And also hit our comment section. Let us know what podcast you feel that we should check out, because we would love to get some help from you for a change. Give us a day off.
Absolutely. We've got so much more coming up. This is Podsauce.
Welcome back to Podsauce. I'm Alicia Renee.
And I'm Dax Holt.
Our next guest is the host of Mafia Tapes. Now, to know me, is to know that I'm all here for mafia, narcos, drug lords. I don't know what it is. Don't judge me. But Celia Aniskovich is the host of Mafia Tapes. She's here with us right now. Celia, what's up, boo? Hey.
Hey. Thanks for having me. This is the most fun interview I think I've ever done.
That's what I like to hear.
It's what we do. It's what we do. We want you to tell all of your counterparts to come on down, because we're out here trying to do God's work. Let's get into Mafia Tapes, because I'm here for it, sis. Now, the subject is Dominic Montiglio, right? And so what I found very fascinating, well, first of all, just give us the elevator pitch to those who may not be familiar with Mafia Tapes. Give us the elevator pitch and then I'll go.
Absolutely. So Mafia Tapes is an 8-part podcast series, and it is the story of Dominic Montiglio, who was an associate of the Gambino Mafia family. Even if you're not well versed in the mafia, you may have heard of the 5 families in New York, and he was, part of one of those. And his unique role was that he was sort of an overseer of the DeMeo crew, who were a deadly arm of the mafia family. They were sort of the enforcers of the Gambino crime family. And Dominic is an interesting guy. What I will say about Mafia Tapes is it's got something for mafia fans, but even if you're not a mafia fan, it's not your typical mob story. It's sort of an unreliable narrator meets a mob story meets a journey I didn't expect to go on, certainly. And it's got a little bit of everything in it for all different types of people.
That may be the best elevator pitch for a podcast we've
1,000,000%.
ever had. That was spot on.
I feel like she's done it before. I feel like this is not her first time at the rodeo. What I really love about, well, not love, but what I found interesting about Dominic's trajectory is that he ended up being like a successful art creator. What's the word? What's the phrase? Artist? Artist.
Yeah.
Was that something that you found to be kind of like blown away by also?
Well, it was funny because I had always sort of been told he was this outsider artist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was the phrase that was used about him in Brooklyn. And, you know, lots of people call themselves artists in Brooklyn. I don't know. I was sort of like, yeah, whatever, sure. And when I went to visit Dominic in his home, he has art everywhere and it's stunning. I mean, it is incredible work. It's tortured, it's complicated, but it's beautiful. And I think, you know, it's just one of many facets of Dominic that you look at him and you think, your life could have ended very differently. You could have taken a different path. You could have, you know, become an artist. You could have, he's also this phenomenal singer.
Girl, stop. He is not over here holding a tune.
He could have become a 60s pop star, like without a doubt. His daughter also has this remarkable voice that she, I think, in part inherited from him. But he just had so many different surprising elements. You know, artist is just one that I was sort of blown away by.
So I need to know, how does this story fall into your lap? Because this is something that I feel like people could take these stories to their grave and never tell anyone on a public level. And you're sitting here with this completely fascinating story and being able to put it out to the world.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting. I'm not a podcast host by trade. I make documentaries mostly for a living, and so I had done some documentary stories sort of in the mob space. And transparently, this story sort of came to me, and I thought, I don't really want to do another mob story. And it became very clear to me very quickly that this wasn't just your average mob story, and that's what really interested me. You know, I wasn't interested in. So often we glamorize the mob, you know, it's sort of the Hollywoodification of them. And I wasn't interested in that. And also, so often you hear mob stories from men. And I wanted to, you know, we have a almost completely female team. I wanted to see how women were going to tell a mob story. I wanted to dig in that way. And so Ross Broder, Dominic's friend, came to us with all these tapes. He had all these tapes from years of Dominic Montiglio's life that he just sort of pressed the on button and let him talk. And so that was kind of my primer to Dominic. But what I found, you know, it's called Mafia Tapes, and I thought this was going to be an exploration into these tapes. And if you've gotten through episode 6, it's out now, you know that it quickly, I sort of decide I need to know more than what's in these tapes, and I need to get on a plane, and I need to meet Dominic Montiglio in person, and I need to start to understand the people who, you know, the cops who were after him, the lawyers who sat down with him, but also I interviewed, you know, people who just grew up in his neighborhood, on his block. What was it like to live on that block at the time? And so I wanted to paint a portrait of a mobster and a life, but also a portrait of Brooklyn. And then for me, it really evolved, and certainly you'll see this in the final 2 episodes, into a story of the people left behind in mob stories. Who are the kids? Who are the friends? Who are those people that we don't hear about? And so I do think Dominic Montiglio could have taken this story to the grave. And, you know, he's been interviewed before, but I think not quite like this. And so I just feel really grateful and lucky to have gotten to hear his story and the story of so many other threads.
So, you know, Cecilia, what has been the reaction, like Dominic's daughter, now that your podcast is out and people are listening to it and this is becoming a really big podcast, what does Dominic's daughter say about this? Is she happy that it's out or no?
Well, what I'll say is, first of all, Dominic died while we were making this podcast, and he died unexpectedly. And the last 2 episodes of the series grapple with that. And I will say personally, the way I finished the series and the way I think about the story was radically altered by Dominic's death. It really had an impact on me that I was not expecting, and it changed how we decided to end the story. I'm really proud of the whole team and how we decided to end the story. But I think with each episode release, you know, to your question, there are episodes that people love and episodes that people don't. You know, I hear from people involved every week. Sometimes they're thrilled, sometimes they're upset. And my hope is that everyone will get to the end, that everyone will listen to the 8 episodes, and then, you can't make everyone happy. I hope and I believe that we were fair to everyone. That is always my hope. And I do think at the end of 8 episodes that everyone will feel good about where we got. But again, everyone has different reasons for wanting this to have happened. And so I'm aware that this might not be the perfect 8 hours for each and every person.
Celia, you being a journalist, this isn't your first mob story that you've covered. Are you ever concerned for your own safety? And I'm asking totally legit here because you're airing out laundry of groups of people that are probably pretty private and don't want their stuff out there. So are you ever concerned for your own safety?
Yeah, it's a good question. And you will hear a couple episodes later from where you're at now that I was concerned for my own safety when I got on a plane to see Dominic. I'd say I probably am not concerned enough. I've gotten myself in some tricky situations, but at the end of the day, I do this work because I think most people are inherently good at their core. Really, I do, and I have a strong sense of trust in people. And yeah, that can screw you over. But I think
pretty sure the mob is not the most trustworthy people out there.
He greeted her with a gun on the table. I don't know. She's very in the lead. There was a gun on the table. Yeah.
But there's a common sense element, right? I've been in situations where I thought I shouldn't be here right now, and I removed myself. But yeah, I mean, there's always a worry. Look, I also have a super distinctive last name. I'm not Mary Smith. So you want to look me up, you can. I worry about my family. I did another podcast series about a Russian spy. There are concerns that I have. But I think it's always weighing the concerns. And I talked to a lot of people who knew Dominic before I got on that plane. And I felt good about the choice that I made, but also, we had plans in place. I'll say that in case.
She said,
God forbid.
I had my will written up.
No, she said, if I don't text y'all in 10 minutes, come a knocking. Come a knocking. Now, Celia, this is a podcast discovery show. What podcast are you listening to right now?
Oh God, that is really hard. So I'm always behind on all podcasts. I'm obsessed with revisionist history, Malcolm Gladwell's podcast, always have been. I listen to the long form podcasts a lot. I do a lot of crime storytelling, so I'm an addict to criminal. And basically anything Wondery's doing, I also love. So all over the place.
Celia Aniskovich, host of Mafia Tapes. I love it. Dax Ketchup, what are you doing?
I'm sorry. I know. I need a quick trip to Vegas too, so I can listen to it the whole way.
I made time. You make time, and you guys should definitely make time. We'll put a link up to Mafia Tapes on Podsauce because that's just what we do, right?
That's what we do. We got so much more coming up. Don't go anywhere. This is Podsauce.
Welcome back to Podsauce, your podcast discovery show. D.
Yo.
I have to say, before we get into your Odd Pod Pick of the Week, that's your jingle.
All right.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really enjoy your Odd Pods.
I do too.
Here's why. Every once in a while, I find a new way that I should be hustling through life. Because some of these picks are just so out there, but they have views up the yin-yang, sponsorships up the yin-yang, and I'm like, you mean to tell me I could just have a podcast about my feet and the high wiki score I got?
You could absolutely have one. The visual is helpful with the feet, though.
Yeah, but you can also just say, have you seen, let me see, someone that have you seen such and such's feet? Insert whatever celebrity. They've got 3 bunions.
I'm sure there is a podcast devoted to feet. And I will one day talk about it on my Odd Pod. But today, my Odd Pod for this week is called A Hot Dog is a Sandwich.
Ooh.
And it is, they call themselves mythical chefs, which I love, so the hosts of the show, mythical chefs, but they are debating and talking about all the food controversies that are out there. And I'm talking some simple things like, what is the right way to eat a bagel? And they talk about it and they discuss it, and it's really funny in the way that they dive into these topics as if they were like monumental topics.
Right.
Because food is so important to people. But they got some really funny episodes. They dive into the Cheeto Puff versus the original Cheeto.
Flamin' Hot Cheeto.
No, just the crunchy one, right?
I
Can
want
we
the
say
Flamin' Hot.
crunchy
Yes,
Cheetos?
yes.
Okay.
Give me the
Crunchy
original
Cheetos.
OG.
They went in. Another topic was the best Hanukkah food out there, which is easy, latkes.
What's a latke?
Like a fried potato pancake.
Oh, I got some of them in the freezer. I got them from Trader Joe's.
I mean, hands down.
Okay.
Like there shouldn't even be a topic because
with
that
creme
is just
fraiche,
it.
a little
Yes.
dill.
Oh, no, just with sour cream
That too.
or applesauce.
No creme fraiche?
No.
I like mine with creme fraiche.
Yeah, no.
Well, you can have your latke. How you want your latke?
See, now look at, here we go.
You know what I'm saying?
Debating food.
Don't make me
This
take my wig
is
off.
why the Odd Pod exists. This is why this podcast, A Hot Dog is a Sandwich, is there, because people love debating food. So
I'm here for
make
it.
sure you check it out. That is my Odd Pod pick of this week.
That's a really, really good one, D-Money. Thank you so much, Celia, host of the Mafia Tapes. Such a great podcast.
Yeah, definitely a bingeable podcast if I've ever heard one. And to make sure you guys keep up on all things podcast related, make sure you're following us on social media at the Podsauce. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We are everywhere.
We out here.
Just slanging these podcasts around.
Not slanging. My ponytail is way too tight for this foolishness. It hurts when I laugh. Oh my gosh. Tell them where they can find you, D.
You can find me at Dax Holt.
And you guys can find me at I Am Alicia Renee. Until next time, thank you all for listening, watching, enjoying. We really appreciate it. Be good to yourselves.
Peace.